Welcome back to the briefing. There are two numbers that define why the war between Iran and the United States just opened a second front that has no borders, no radar signatures, and no physical defenses that can stop it, and the gap between them is not a tactical consideration. It is the proof that kinetic warfare has become obsolete as the primary method of imposing strategic costs. Number one, 200,000. That is how many devices were permanently wiped across 79 countries in a single coordinated operation at 3:30 in the morning, when Iran, his intelligence ministry, executed a cyber attack against Stryker Corporation using weaponized mobile device management systems. Number two, 16. That is how many years Iran spent planning revenge for the Stuxnet attack that destroyed centrifuges at Natanz nuclear facility in 2010. Let that sink in. The United States and Israel demonstrated in 2010 that cyber weapons could physically destroy nuclear infrastructure. And Iran just demonstrated in 2026 that the same logic works in reverse by erasing the digital infrastructure of a $25 billion medical technology company that serves 150 million patients annually. Stay with me, because this is not about hackers or data breaches or ransomware. This is about what happens when nation-state intelligence services weaponize the remote management tools that every global corporation depends on to operate distributed workforces and maintain equipment across continents. Stryker operates in 79 countries. When the attack executed at 3:30 a.m., every laptop, every server, every personal phone enrolled in Microsoft Intune management was simultaneously factory reset. Not locked, not encrypted, wiped. The data gone, the operating systems reset, the device is rendered useless for anything except being re-imaged from scratch. 56,000 employees were cut off from corporate systems. Communication fell back to WhatsApp because the enterprise infrastructure no longer existed, and before the wipe executed, the attackers exfiltrated 50 terabytes of data from the network. The group claiming responsibility calls itself Handala, presents itself as a pro-Palestine hacktivist collective, seeking revenge for the 168 people, mostly children, who were killed when the Manab school in southern Iran was struck on February 28th, during the first day of Operation Epic Fury. That is the public narrative. The actual attribution, confirmed by Palo Alto Networks and other elite cybersecurity firms, is that Handala is a front for Void Manticore, a threat actor directly controlled by Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security. This was not activist retaliation. This was a state-sponsored operation authorized at the highest levels of Iranian security apparatus, timed, and targeted to demonstrate capability while maintaining plausible deniability through the hacktivist cover story. And the target selection was not random. Stryker acquired the Israeli medical technology company Orthospace in 2019. Stryker has official contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Those facts, in the framework Iran uses to justify operations, transform Stryker from a civilian medical company into a legitimate military target with Zionist connections. The fact that Stryker's technology serves 150 million patients globally, that its products include surgical robots and defibrillators and critical care equipment, that wiping its infrastructure puts lives at risk, none of that factors into the strategic calculation. What factors is that this operation sends a message to every American corporation with Israeli partnerships and defense contracts that their infrastructure is vulnerable regardless of how many cybersecurity consultants they employ or how much they spend on network defense. The operational mechanics of the attack reveal why traditional cybersecurity cannot defend against this threat model. Microsoft Intune is a mobile device management platform that allows IT administrators to remotely manage, update, and if necessary, wipe devices across an organization. It is designed to protect corporate data by enabling remote erasure if a device is lost or stolen or if an employee leaves the company. The functionality is built into the operating system at a level that cannot be easily disabled without breaking the management capabilities that global corporations depend on to maintain security and compliance across distributed workforces. But that same functionality becomes a weapon when an adversary gains administrative access to the management console through credential theft, social engineering, insider threats, or exploitation of vulnerabilities in the management platform itself. Once inside with elevated privileges, the attacker does not need to compromise 200,000 individual devices by installing malware or exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in each one. The attacker compromises one management system and uses it to simultaneously target everything enrolled in that system using commands that the system is designed to execute without question because they come from what appears to be legitimate administrative authority. From Tehran, with a single command executed at 3:30 a.m., coordinated to hit during off hours when security teams are minimally staffed, devices factory reset in Australia, India, Ireland, and the United States within the same minute. No malware needed, no exploit chains required, No indicators of compromise that trigger defensive systems, because the commands look identical to legitimate administrative actions, just administrative credentials, and the weaponization of legitimate functionality designed for corporate convenience and security that becomes a vulnerability the moment an adversary gains access to the control plane. And this is explicitly a proof of concept operation. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps published a target list after the attack: Google, Microsoft, Palantir, NVIDIA, IBM, Oracle. These are not random technology companies. These are the corporations that provide the cloud infrastructure, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and computational hardware that American military operations depend on at the most fundamental level. Microsoft manages Pentagon cloud infrastructure through its JEDI contract and Azure government services. Palantir provides battlefield intelligence and data analytics that turn raw information into actionable targeting. NVIDIA manufactures the GPUs that power American AI targeting systems, autonomous drone operations, and machine learning models that identify threats faster than human analysts. If these companies experience the same type of infrastructure wipe that Stryker just absorbed, American military operational capability does not degrade incrementally. It goes dark. Consider what a Palantir wipe would mean in practice. Palantir's software integrates data from satellites, drones, signals intelligence, human sources, and operational databases to create the common operating picture that commanders use to make decisions. If the systems maintaining that integration are factory reset, the data connections break, the analytical models stop functioning, and the ability to rapidly process intelligence collapses back to manual methods that cannot operate at the speed modern warfare requires. The same logic applies to Google's geospatial services that military operations use for mapping and navigation, to Oracle databases that track logistics and supply chains, to IBM systems managing classified communications. These are not peripheral tools. These are load-bearing pillars of American military infrastructure operating in cyberspace, where borders do not exist and traditional defensive measures provide no protection. The Stuxnet parallel is deliberate, and Iran has been explicit about the connection. In 2010, the United States and Israel deployed malware that physically destroyed 1,000 centrifuges at Natanz by manipulating industrial control systems to run at speeds that cause mechanical failure. The operation was celebrated in Western media as a demonstration of cyber capability that could achieve kinetic effects without dropping bombs. Iran absorbed that lesson, spent 16 years developing capability, and just demonstrated that the principle works bidirectionally. If America can use cyber operations to destroy Iranian nuclear infrastructure, Iran can use cyber operations to destroy American corporate infrastructure that supports military operations. The asymmetry is not in capability. The asymmetry is in vulnerability. American military power depends on digital infrastructure operated by civilian corporations, pursuing profit maximization, which means minimizing security spending and maximizing convenience features like remote device management. Iranian capability depends on intelligence services that do not need to justify security budgets to shareholders and can dedicate resources to offensive operations without worrying about quarterly earnings. FBI Director Kash Patel stated that the Bureau is working around the clock to stay ahead of the threat. That is an admission that defense is reactive. The attackers choose targets, timing, and methods. The defenders respond after penetration is detected, which in this case was after the wipe had already executed and 50 terabytes of data had been exfiltrated. Working around the clock means trying to identify vulnerabilities before attackers exploit them, which is impossible when the vulnerability is not a software flaw but legitimate administrative functionality being used for purposes it was not designed for but is fully capable of executing. The second Shamoon attack on Saudi Aramco in 2012 wiped 35,000 computers. That was 14 years ago. The capability has grown exponentially. Stryker represents 200,000 devices across 79 countries wiped simultaneously. The scale increase is exponential, and the target shift from energy to medical technology demonstrates no sector is off limits if connected to military support through contracts or Israeli partnerships. The global operational paralysis scenario that keeps Pentagon planners awake is not theoretical anymore. It is being demonstrated in real time with a medical technology company serving as the proof of concept. If the next target is Microsoft and the Azure government cloud goes down, every classified system, every intelligence database, every command and control application running on that infrastructure stops functioning. If NVIDIA's manufacturing systems are wiped, the supply chain for military AI hardware breaks. If Palantir's platforms are erased, battlefield intelligence processing reverts to manual methods. These are not recoverable outages measured in hours. These are infrastructure rebuilds measured in weeks or months while adversaries operate freely. And there is no physical defense that stops this. No aircraft carrier can block a cyber attack. No missile defense system intercepts administrative commands sent through legitimate management platforms. No radar detects network traffic that looks identical to normal IT operations until the wipe executes. The geographic boundaries that constrain kinetic warfare are irrelevant in cyberspace. An operation planned in Tehran executes in 79 countries simultaneously with no border crossings, no physical supply chains that can be interdicted. The weapon is code. The delivery mechanism is existing corporate infrastructure. The defense requires perfect security across every system, every employee account, every vendor relationship, every device. One compromise anywhere provides the access needed to execute operations everywhere the infrastructure reaches. The 150 million patients who depend on Stryker technology for surgical procedures, cardiac monitoring, orthopedic implants, and emergency medical equipment are now at risk not because they are strategic targets, but because they are incidental casualties of a conflict where civilian infrastructure and military capability have become inseparably intertwined through corporate consolidation, defense contracts, and acquisition strategies that blur the lines between commercial and military applications. When defense contractors acquire medical companies, when technology firms serve both commercial customers and classified government systems, when the same management platforms control consumer devices and Pentagon laptops, when the same cloud infrastructure hosts Netflix and NSA databases, there is no such thing as a purely civilian target anymore under the framework of modern warfare. Everything with any connection to military operations, no matter how indirect or how many degrees of separation exist between the medical device and the battlefield application, becomes targetable under the framework Iran is using to justify these operations. The patients who will die because surgical robots are offline, or because cardiac monitors cannot communicate with hospital systems, or because critical device firmware updates cannot be deployed, are not military casualties in any traditional sense. But they are casualties nonetheless. And their deaths serve the strategic purpose of demonstrating that American corporations with Israeli partnerships or defense ties operate in a threat environment where patient safety and operational security are in direct conflict with each other. What happens when a nation-state intelligence service demonstrates it can wipe 200,000 devices across 79 countries simultaneously using weaponized corporate management tools? What happens when the target list includes every major technology company that supports American military operations? What happens when there is no border, no radar, no physical defense that can stop attacks that use legitimate administrative credentials? What happens when 16 years of planning culminates in proof that cyber weapons work in both directions, and American vulnerability to this threat model is structural rather than fixable? The answer is that the second front of the war is now open, and it has none of the constraints that limit kinetic operations. No geographical boundaries, no production bottlenecks, no logistics challenges, no ammunition that depletes. Just code, credentials, and the understanding that American military power rests on digital infrastructure operated by corporations that prioritize operational convenience over security. Iran spent 16 years preparing for this. The attack on Stryker is the opening move. The target list has been published. And every corporation on that list is calculating whether their security posture can withstand a nation-state adversary with demonstrated capability and intent.